Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel, and I have a couple topics to discuss in this very latest Moon Lambo Hot Jam. I was asked on Twitter, why is it that MoneyGram, who was they partnered with Ripple, they were using on-demand liquidity, utilizing XRP as a bridge currency, so why is it that MoneyGram didn't reduce their remittance fees? That is to say, the prices they were charging their customers, why didn't those prices go down? And it's an excellent question, and I do want to talk about that. And then there was this headline from A&B Crypto. Should XRP traders expect a pump, or has the alt lost its way? Bow, bow, bow. That sounds... ooh, a little scary. Lots to say here, but before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos all up on the internet because that's a fun hobby. But that's all that's going on here, damn it. And if you don't like it, you can just get out. So there's this thread from the end of July, in which case, by the way, it's worth mentioning again because it's funny. And I actually did cover this in a separate video. It would be real short, though. So there is a Cointelegraph article about XRP. And in this article, they cited the following. Here, I'll even just pull up the screen grab. Why the hell not? They wrote, XRP price swung higher on July 28th as its parent company, Ripple, entered an agreement with SBI Remit to back a remittance corridor from Japan to the Philippines. And so there you go. Apparently a cryptocurrency is a business and it can have a parent company. No. A cryptocurrency is not a business, my friends. And Ripple on top of it, you see, you know why they said that. It's the whole thing where obviously the author... it seems obvious at this point because they didn't fix the problem, but the author must think that that XRP is something that's centralized, that Ripple controls, and they also think that if a cryptocurrency is centralized and controlled by an entity, that it has a parent company, which is equally ridiculous. So it's fun. Anyway, so I highlighted that, and then somebody named Raphael asked this question. I want to heart this. This is an excellent question, great topic for a video, and I have a number of thoughts on this, but Raphael wrote the following. The only problem that remains is the question of fees. Ripple's MoneyGram experiment showed that even with superior crypto, in terms of transaction speed and liquidity, fees remained high. Too many greedy middlemen yet? Question mark. Great question, Raphael. I very genuinely appreciate that. And let me just start by tackling the very last part of that. You were asking if there were too many greedy middlemen and if that was a factor in fees not going down. Well, I'll get to the premise after this because I'm not completely ceding the point, but let me say this first. On the question of are there too many greedy middlemen in here and that's why the prices were high, if we just engage in a quick critical thinking exercise, the answer becomes very obvious very quickly. And try starting a business. Can you charge whatever you want? Because think about it. Be a greedy person, just charge outrageous prices. Is that a model for success? Will that work? How about this? And mind you, I own a business. I started a business with my brother in January of 2010. We're still running it today. It has nothing to do with crypto or blockchain whatsoever, which is why this is a much more fun thing to talk about, frankly. As much as I love the business, this is much more enjoyable. For some reason, it just grabs me to a greater degree. This just crypto and blockchain, but consider this. Like, let's just have a little hypothetical here. Let's say that you start a business. And what you're doing is you're selling a widget, just some made up product. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just a thought exercise. And let's say that you have a business that is equivalent to a different business in terms of economies of scale, just meaning, your buying power, just everything, your employee size, just whatever it is. If everything is exactly equivalent and you're providing that product and or service exactly the same to a T, can you charge whatever you want to be greedy and people will just buy it anyway because they're tricking the consumer? Does it work like that? Or will the open market figure out, oh, wow, they're charging too much, and then go to your competitor? Well, the obvious answer is they're going to go to the competitor, right? This is very clear. So that means that if consumers are choosing to pay so-and-so price for so-and-so product, it's because they're choosing to do that. There's a reason for that, and different people value different things. In fact, many times, whether it's a product or a service, it's not all about price. And so think about that. There could be other considerations. There are other considerations. Service level, if it's a product, how long is it going to take to have the product delivered? There's all sorts of things. Warranty, who knows? There's so many considerations there. And so it's not greed. It's more like the consumers are spending money, and that tells the businesses how much they're allowed to charge. That's more accurate. Because if a business is going to ignore what consumers are telling them, they're going to charge a price too high, and then they're going to go out of business. So I assure you that is not how it works. So it's not the case that there's just greedy people out there going, blah, 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 taking the peasants' money, blah, 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 stodgy, blah, blah, stodgy sounds, blah, 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 blah. No, that, I promise you that is not what is happening here. So what is going on? Very interesting. Check this out. So here was my response on Twitter. I wrote, regardless of industry, businesses that are early adopters use cost-reducing technology to reduce their expenses, padding their margins. As that technology is adopted by competitors, market forces push end-user prices down. And I also wrote that you should note that with MoneyGram, they operate in over 20,000 corridors. On-demand liquidity is only live in a handful of corridors, so there was never a way that MoneyGram could suddenly reduce its prices. Things like that take time. And so, look, I'm not aware of all of the data in terms of every single corridor or even overall exactly what the fees are. Yeah, there's a general percentage of what it might be with MoneyGram. I've seen numbers thrown about, and that's all fine. That's well and good, I suppose. But with over 20,000 corridors in effect, when MoneyGram is partnered with Ripple, and only a handful of on-demand liquidity corridors open, the overall experience going through MoneyGram was not having anything to do with on-demand liquidity, so I wouldn't have expected company-wide there to be some sort of dramatic change in terms of fees. But even with on-demand liquidity, look, this is just the way that it works. You will be able to charge what consumers are willing to pay you, whatever the market will bear. That's it. So there's a couple ways you can approach this if you're MoneyGram, right? Or any. It doesn't even have to be MoneyGram. Pick any one of Ripple's on-demand liquidity customers that in the corridor where on-demand liquidity is operating. Just pick any of them, and you got a couple choices. Like, say you're the first on-demand liquidity customer to begin operating with that technology in a specific corridor. And there are requirements for that. Obviously, there has to be sufficient regulatory clarity. There has to be sufficient blend of price and liquidity, or else it can't happen. But let's assume that that's in place, and you start transacting. Now you've got all of these incredible savings because the messaging platform is better, and you don't have to deal with the traditional pre-funding and Nostra Vostra accounts and all the ridiculous expenses associated with that. And so you have this tremendous leg up where suddenly your expenses, let's say they do go down in the most, and they would in the Ripple says in the most exotic corridors, upwards of 60 to 70%, right? So let's say that's actually what's happening. So you got these big savings, and they're not going to be consistent. It depends on how much friction there is in any given corridor with specific transactions. So it's not all like a set 60 or 70%. That's just not how this works. But let's say that you have tremendous savings. Let's just say in a general sense, whatever that means, you have big savings. Well, if you're a company, you've got a couple choices here. You can change nothing and keep charging your customers the exact same amount. And then with your reduced costs, you can take that in because you have extra margin there, and you can take that purely as profit. And again, competitive forces are what they are, but as new technology unfolds, and we see this not just here, but in all sorts of industries, early adopters of technology that reduce expenses, yes, sometimes there will be entities that in the short term, yes, they're able to take profit, but then what happens when competition comes in? But before I get to that, there are two options, like I said. So you can go ahead and pad your margins, or you can cut your costs. And to what degree that would be up to you. Now, you think, well, wait, why would I cut my costs? I could just pad my margins. I'm making all this extra money. Why would I even consider reducing my costs at all? Well, I'm glad you asked. The reason is if you do that, you can effectively buy market share. Because if you're suddenly X amount below your competition when you weren't before, and now you can operate at a profit at a level that your competitors can't. If you start going that intense, like if your whole mission is to not even make profit, which by the way, sometimes businesses sell at break even or at a loss to pick up market share. Like, have you heard of Amazon, by the way? That's been their strategy for the longest damn time, although it's shifting, but that's a whole different thing, but not entirely a whole different thing. But suffice it to say, what you can do is reduce your expenses, And then you can cut costs however much you want to, and then customers, if you sufficiently market it, so there's a lot of factory, of course I acknowledge that, and there's a lot of dynamics, but if you do that, you can actually steal competition from your competitors in a way that previously you weren't able to. And so you can think, so what happens then? If you start doing that, your competition is going to start wondering, how do you do this? And eventually, maybe some people are going to figure out, well, what's this Ripple on-demand liquidity XRP whole thing? What's this? What's going on here? And so you do have then the second participant in that corridor jump in. And now you got to fight with one more person, right? And so it's not like overnight snap of a finger. You have customers wishy-washy going back and forth, but over time, the market does figure this stuff out. And so you have more and more competitors jumping in and jumping in and jumping in. The market just figures it out. And before you know it, you have a new normal where you can't pad your margins anymore because there's so much competition that you're all in the same playing field. And so if you are going to charge more, it's not a company being greedy. If you're able to do that, good on you. That means that you're selling something else that's not just the product or service necessarily in and of itself. There's other considerations that consumers are taking into account when making these decisions. If somebody's paying more than what a competitor is charging, there's a reason. And it's either that the customer is stupid and they actually didn't do sufficient research, or more likely, because otherwise it's not sustainable, more likely something is being offered beyond just price that is attractive to the individual. And so what's going to happen here is as on-demand liquidity is continually adopted with XRP as a bridge currency, this is going to result in a drive down in terms of ultimately the fees that MoneyGram or any other remittance firm can charge, assuming that it does end up being globally adopted in a more meaningful way than it is today. And there's been lots of success, and as long as it continues to work, that it's offering true value, that will happen. It doesn't happen overnight, but of course, prices will be driven down. It's simple market forces. This is true. These market forces I'm describing in this video, this is true in every industry. There's competition. It's not the case that you can just be greedy unless there's some sort of like outside influence, like if there's a government influence that gives subsidies to so-and-so, yeah, you can have stuff like that. You can find outlier instances, but I'm just saying in markets where there's like truly free open markets where consumers and businesses just work together and there isn't sort of an interference, yeah, it's supply and demand, the invisible hand. Have you heard of this? Google the invisible hand. Right? It's economics 101, supply and demand. That's a real thing, but it's definitely not greed. You cannot be greedy and just find success unless it's a weird outlier instance. But in a general sense, no, that is not how markets work. Now into this from AMB Crypto. Should XRP traders... Actually, I want to say one more thing. Before, I may not have said this sufficiently. Let me harp on this a little bit more. The fact that these market forces exist, the fact that they occur, this is very good for the people that are moving money across borders, because in a lot of these corridors, you can think about in the corridor which has now been devastated by the SEC from the United States to Mexico, United States to the Philippines. A lot of these people are poor individuals, and I think we can all feel for that. But they're working wherever they're working, sending money back home to their families, right? And so less money as a result of these competitive forces, less money goes to the companies. Less money. And it doesn't mean that like their margins will be what their margins are. Like once competitive forces come in, because like you have a reduction in expenses for the companies, and then you have competitive forces drive down the top line sales, and then you'll end up at about the same margin because they still have to pay their employees, obviously. So the margin will be what it is, but you're going to find a lower price. And so all of these people that are sending money back home, they're finding due to competitive forces, they're suddenly paying less, which is why Ripple is a genuine force for good. So if this actually works out, they're a genuine force for good. All right, now into this. Should XRP traders expect a pump, or has the alt lost its way? Look, I've only got a couple things to say on this here. I don't want to go through the whole article here, but they have this little section where they're talking about on-chain signals, yay or nay. They're getting a few things wrong, and I don't think they're doing it to be trolly, but I just want to be clear about this, because look, the whole crypto market moves in tandem, and so on-chain metrics absolutely do matter. And so XRP moves with the rest of the market, and when there is excitement, there is a flurry, there's a flurry of activity, including notable increases in account creation on the XRP ledger. And there are also notable upticks in volume. And Bitcoin certainly leads the way, but you can see this stuff. And so if you don't see tremendous upticks in the short term or this or that, whatever, it doesn't mean anything. And in fact, as I've said many times, XRP is typically the least correlated to Bitcoin out of all the top 10 cryptocurrencies. There's data to support that. I've covered it in previous videos. But still, if you zoom in on a chart, you can see it still does move with the rest of the market. So that matters. And then they also covered this. They had this little subheading, liquidity borders aren't liquid enough. And they wrote, in terms of utility as well, XRP's liquidity border is facing a massive decline, a sign of declining usage. Corridors other than EUR are facing a similar depreciation as well. So it is not looking great as far as functionality is concerned. Look, and so what they're sharing here, it's from Bitstamp, which happens to be a Ripple on-demand liquidity partner. Look, this is not, you have to understand, what you're seeing on your screen, and they did share this chart, it's on your screen if you care to look. This is not showing on-demand liquidity usage. This is showing Bitstamp XRP EUR. That's what it's showing. That's showing the liquidity. That's it. And so, you know, in a corridor where on-demand liquidity is being utilized, a portion of that activity would make up what you're seeing, and we don't know what it is. It's not broken out here. Presumably, in such corridors, it would still be a small percentage based on where we're at today. What you're talking about, what it really is more so here, it's just traders on the exchange, liquidity up, liquidity down, okay, but still, XRP is moving in tandem with the rest of the market. This isn't some sort of sign that on-demand liquidity functionality is down, therefore that's why we're seeing this chart. That's not what this chart is showing. So I just wanted to break that out and explain that. So I'll wrap up there, though. I am not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything that I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.